to integrate data science with telematics to now have actionable insights. We'll do a quick overview of the predictive analytics solution and problem. We'll talk about the integration. We'll talk about our early adopter program for those that would like to get in on the ground floor, and discuss the value proposition around predictive analytics and how we think it can help fleets achieve some savings. So I'll go ahead and let Shiva do the introduction and talk about really the background behind this and how he got and Pitstop got involved in setting up predictive analytics.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Very excited to be here. So just quick introduction. My name is Shiva Bhardwaj. I'm the founder and CEO at Pitstop. My background is growing up in family-owned service centers from a young age, getting so fascinated by all the computation being put into vehicles. So tons of computers, electronics, I'm sure everyone knows that. And then working for very big tech companies, such as projects for Tesla, and seeing how data, when leveraged the right way, can really help make better decisions on the operations side of the business. So, in today's world right now, we have challenges where getting really good technicians is hard. There's a shortage. There's like this stigma, as at least I was growing up, that being working with your hands, being a labor worker is not a great thing. And so I believe there's a lot of movement to change that. But in the short, it's, hey, any way we can empower technicians to be more efficient, to be able to do more jobs faster, to help them with the various types of vehicles in the market. There's so many different propulsion types now. It's a huge value add. And then on top of that, looking at vehicle costs are increasing. And so there's a lot of changes now happening in the ecosystem that I think the next 10 years is a lot more disruptive than the past, even 20 years. And so at the center of what's possible, there's already so much information that every one of your fleet that's on this call is generating. Within AssetWorks, you're collecting tons of information about how you're repairing vehicles, who's fixing it, the efficiency of it. There's telematics when you have your vehicles equipped that's pulling off real-time data like fault codes or other sensor parameters like the battery voltage or the tire pressure. And then there's various information coming from the OEMs directly, as well as diagnostic tool companies about specific make models, how they're designed, engineered. And so this information already exists at scale, and the value that we're looking to deliver here with Pitstop and the AssetWorks partnership is being able to bring these data sets together. And what that means is, hey, there's too much information that any one person can really dissect on a given day. So what fault, for example, codes that are coming from the vehicle actually correlate to breakdowns we've seen in our fleet in the past, and what should I be acting on? So in a given, let's say you have 500 assets. At any given time, you could have up to 2,000 alerts or codes popping up on your vehicle. And so that's a lot of volume to go through. The truth is, there might be only 2 or 3 vehicles that you really need to attend to in the next few days that's going to cause some sort of breakdown. And the idea is trying to prioritize those assets that are at high risk. And so the ways to do this is use these data sets and drive what's called predictive maintenance, which is really just making smart decisions on the information we're collecting. And as I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the new ChatGPT AI technologies. This type of analytics where you can take raw sensor data, time series data, and look at all this historical text that we're putting into the AssetWorks platforms, there's a lot of opportunities to do this type of correlation and extract insights, much better than ever before in history. So it's a really exciting time to be applying this type of analysis. So more importantly than just high level AI and like exciting stuff, the question is like, okay, so what's the bottom line? What does it actually do to my fleet? How does it really help? So there's a few key areas that we've been able to explore by working with AssetWorks and a few SIG customers, we did some early work with the city of Long Beach, worked with a group called Circle as well. And what we learned is that there's opportunities to not only drive vehicle uptime, but to help drive technician efficiency, so diagnostic efficiency, as well as reduce tow costs. This is an example of a fleet of about 8,000 assets that we've been working with to show them that you can predict failures on average 9 days ahead of a breakdown with a 94% accuracy. And for them, that was a $2.8 million savings. And the most important piece is that accuracy chart there on the right is the ability to actually try to quantify the value of these alerts. So let's say you turn on this partnership between Pitstop and AssetWorks tomorrow, you're going to be sent a bunch of insights and alerts, but you want to know, hey, after 30 days, what is that ROI? After 90 days, after 1 year, how much impact is it really delivering to my bottom line? And so by correlating the alerts to the types of failures happening on the road, we're able to then quantify the benefits. And that's where we're seeing on average 10x value, which really becomes a no-brainer. I think the first steps are, can you trust this tool? Does it really work for my fleet? Because every fleet is different out there. Those are all very valid questions, and we're willing to partner and work through those questions and show the value. But again, opportunities are quite exciting, and they are very specific. Help the technicians be more empowered, reduce hard costs like tow costs, and then you'll see a lot of benefits of more efficient communication between potentially driver, shop, fleet manager, and other people involved, as well as benefits of overall vehicle uptime increasing or asset availability, depending on what you're looking at. I think that's really what I wanted to go through, Mark, at a high level.
No, thank you, Shiv. Yeah, just sorry,
Sure. Yeah. So here's some of the
talk to this real quick.
Yeah, of course. So here's some of the analysis on top of fault code. So I know I was kind of talking a lot about that. It's not just about fault code analysis, which is already being generated from the vehicle, and many times it's way too late. But there's also looking at the actual sensor data. So if you look at the battery voltage and cranking patterns on every single trip for a vehicle, you can run a forward simulation. So this is saying, hey, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, how many cases are there where the vehicle might not start? And being able to predict that with a high accuracy can help, especially when the seasons are changing, temperatures changing, because you never want to go out there and get stuck and then have to boost a vehicle. So that's one specific example, but the diesel exhaust system becomes a really big pain point where you got to do forced regens or manual regens. The engine can derate. So what is the root cause of that problem? Is it the filter needs to be cleaned, the DPF filter? Is there exhaust recirculation cleansing? So getting to the root cause of that faster, understanding when things are starting to trend towards engine derate, these are huge value items. And then, of course, there's a world of electrification, especially, I would say, a medium, more on the light duty for sure. So understanding tire wear, battery health is important, keeping tabs on it, while you're also trying to figure out charging infrastructure and the best routes to put those vehicles on. So that's some of the analytics, which is taking sensor data and predicting the future and estimating the future on your behalf. So this is really where the AI piece kicks in and the unique advantage on top of just looking at fault codes.
Yeah, and so, this all sounds really good. And last year, AssetWorks and Pitstop, as mentioned, we put together a partnership and a pilot with 2 customers to sort of test this all out. What we really wanted to do is understand, what kind of data is flowing? What's the volume like? How frequently does this come? What operationally has to happen? And how do we integrate this into our overall workflows? And so that really was the objective of this pilot. And so we worked out with the group and really wanted to sort of test this all out. If we look at a high level, as Shiva sort of described, we're taking the diagnostic data that's coming off the vehicle along with the sensor information, and then feeding that data into Pitstop's engines, which then return really 2 types of data. One is are the filtered and prioritized DTC alerts, where we showed, the examples there of the accuracy rates around those, and then also the machine learning models that we just showed. But really, the objective behind this and what we saw in talking with the pilot members and everything is increasing scheduled services. The whole idea is rather than having breakdowns and failures that we have to respond to, let's plan. Can we predict these failures and get ahead of them before everything happens, and then schedule it so it's less disruptive to the organization. And again, as we mentioned, there really were two sets of outputs that we found. One is the DTC analysis, and the other is the machine learning models. Both of them end up producing insights that are ranked critical, major, and minor, with criticals really representing things that are failing today or about to fail in the short term that really should be addressed immediately. Those are the high alert things that should be ringing bells in every shop. They're not that frequent. What we found is that within the insights that we monitored during the pilot, about 2% of them actually came across having a critical status. However, we did find that over half of the insights that we saw were grouped as major, which were things that should be brought in and addressed. What that did leave us with, though, was half of the insights were minor things that didn't need to be taken care of right away. And in today's environment, many cases, we would bring these in because we have an alert. We're not sure exactly what's behind them. So we would bring them in and work on them. What both of the customers were able to do during the pilot was move those minor ones to their PM intervals and then work on those in the next PM because the system already alerted them that, yes, there is a problem, but this is not a major issue. So just within that classification added a lot of value from the insights. This matrix here sort of illustrates the different models that are available through this program. Now, one thing I do want to point out is over here on the right-hand side, that not every telematics service provider has the data needed to support all these models. It does vary by based on the type of device that's connected. Some devices are lo-fi in that they really only capture meter and location data, and others, though, are connected, such as Geotab's device that are connected to the sensor pool and bring back a large amount of sensor data, which is important to feed into these algorithms. So it does matter as to where you get the data and how you get the data. But in general, most of the current telematics providers today are tapping into that rich sensor data. And just to illustrate a case study from the pilot, we're going to look at the battery insights. And one of the models that Pitstop has is it looks at battery state of charge as well as past usage and is the vehicle even parked or not. And so we have two examples here of two different insights that were produced. One was a major. It indicated that the battery had a low state of charge. And the other was one that's a minor, but indicates that a vehicle is parked, hasn't been moved for a while, and that the battery health is starting to decline. So what was interesting about these types of alerts is that this information was being forwarded through the models to the shop team at Long Beach. And over the holidays,
Hey, Angie, it's Kevin Kaiser. How are you doing?
uh,
I'm
hello,
doing
Kevin.
good. Is Robbie available this afternoon?
Mark, I'll get on that. All right. One of the things that we
Yeah, that'll
found
be
is
fine.
over the holidays that there were 30 assets that had alerts pop up because they were parked and not being ran. So rather than having to dispatch a service truck or a technician to go do charges when these vehicles, failed to start, it was a simple phone call out to the coordinators to have them go and run these vehicles and keep them and avoiding, potential road call and breakdown situation and downtime. So, very simple model, but very simple outcomes. So some of the feedback we got from the pilot group was that although they liked these insights, one thing they didn't want them to do is automatically generate service requests. And the fact that half of these were minor DTC alerts, and half of these warnings were minor, would go on to support that. You didn't necessarily want a work request in your queue for work that you didn't necessarily have to do. And that's been actually some experience that others that have worked on this have shared with us, is that too often they were giving insights that were just minor and things they didn't need to do, and they were taking downtime just to resolve those. But customers do want those to behave like a service request or a work request, where if I open a work order, excuse me, I can immediately just add that into a work order job or task to address it. The other thing is this vehicle health report that I see on the side. The information there was something that the customer said they wanted to see on the job as well. And then also get instant notifications when a critical job appears so that they can automatically work on that. So that was, how we should handle these insights. And so we took that and we put together a development requirements document and a development plan. And we've gotten approval, and we're proceeding now to develop AssetWorks Predictive Insights. This will be a new suite of product solutions integrated together based off of our telematics cloud, and utilizing that environment to bring in not only the telematic data, but also the curated insights, as well as then expose that data through our analytics portal, so that customers can write their own reports against that data and also bring that data into other applications that they may want to do further analysis with. So if you think of today's environment, we bring in through our telematics cloud API the telematic data directly from the various telematics service providers. That comes into our cloud, and then through the telematics module feeds into Fleet Focus. And you can view that information today on the fault code query or within a service request query in FA, where we're looking for trouble code type generated requests. It's a very simplistic, unfiltered, unprioritized integration. What we're proposing with the new Predictive Insights is a much more robust integration that allows us to interact with the data more freely and to gather more information, get more benefit from that data. So rather than necessarily feeding that data indirectly into the cloud, we're going to feed the diagnostic trouble code and sensor data, gets read directly by PitStop. They just access the APIs from Geotab and the others, AssetWorks, and then brings that data directly into their engines. We also then, through our integrations, feed to PitStop your maintenance history, so that they can now correlate certain readings with repair activity. When was the last time you repaired the brakes? When was the DF filter replaced? Those type of events get correlated with history to help predict when such occurrences might happen based off of the telematic data that we're reading. Now that data is going to get, now rather than just flowing directly into Fleet Focus, it's actually going to come into a couple different opportunities. One, we're going to have a new predictive insight collection in our cloud. This will be data similar to the DTCs, but will also include the machine learning insights, as well as some additional information, excuse me, the PitStop's able to provide around the assets, including things such as a recommended course of action. Through their relationship with Diesel laptops, they've been able to correlate many of the DTCs to specific system and assembly codes, as well as a recommended action, which then we can now populate onto the job and create jobs with automatically. And so what we intend to do is, one, will feed the existing current workflow. So customers that today are using DTCs and have the faults process set up will continue to still be able to utilize that. In this case, however, you're going to get filtered DTCs, not every random one that the system is throwing at you. So they'll be prioritized and you'll be able to work with them. Additionally, within for customers that are using our mobile focus portals, we're going to have a more streamlined workflow where customers can simply view the outstanding insights and add them right into their workflow process. This makes it it's a lot fewer clicks than what's available in the current workflows. So much more streamlined, easier to use. And as I mentioned, we will also be exposing then those insights through our analytics portal with a special insight dashboard. Now, this will only contain data for the assets enrolled in the program, but it will have all the insight information and dashboards that you can utilize. Now, as our timeline for this project, like I said, we've already kicked off the development of this. We've been working with our teams. We are going to start deploying this out here this summer. The goal is to have both phases done by the end of the year, and really by the fall, customers should be able to have a fully integrated solution where they're not doing anything other than just reaping the benefits of the insights that are being produced. Just some examples of some of the integrations. One, we are going to use our open API, but this will be restricted to just the pit stop solution. You can't use it to write your other API or interfaces, but we will deliver this out of the box configured for pit stop. You'll see that we're going to be exposing assets, maintenance history, as well as part and PM history. Now, this is new data for pit stop, but having part issues is a much more accurate indicator as opposed to necessarily a job description. So that's a better value that we can add by exposing that from our history, as well as also the PM schedules. As one of the things that PitStop does look at is when do insights occur related to PMs to see, can we adjust our PM intervals to better accurately address potential breakdowns, basically get smart PMs. Now, a couple things we are going to be adding are some new fields on the unit and equipment main. One, you'll be able to designate on each asset who the telematic service provider is, what protocol the vehicle utilizes, also who the data science provider, PitStop in this case, will be gathering the data from, and as well as a user grouping. And that's actually used by PitStop to group assets within their application. But this will all be available as part of the API, and we added this so that PitStop can know which vehicles are theirs, are enrolled in the program, and then which vendor they need to go to get the source data with. This should also be a good value to every customer who, in the past has been trying to keep an inventory of their telematic service providers. And as the industry changes and you're going to get OEM direct, this will make it much easier for customers to identify and segment out their fleets. Like I said, we'll support the existing fault management functionality in both M5 and FA, so that customers that do not have the mobile platforms can still interact with these insights. It's just going to involve the current manual process. Additionally, as I mentioned, we are going to be updating the workflow portals, and you'll see here just some examples of what it may look like. One of the key things is that we'll be adding this insight status bar within the application to indicate how many critical, major, and minor insights exist by an asset. The user will be able to drill into those and will easily within the application understand if there are outstanding insights on the asset. Here's just another example of that being added, say, to the asset record within the portals, and the use of a potential slide out that makes it very easy, one click, to add to a work order or add to a work request. Because PitStop has done the data science behind this, each of these insights is mapped to a system code, and so we can automatically generate a system-related job for each of these insights. That saves a lot of time for somebody to, in the current process, has to open the fault assign a job code to it, as well as other data fields just to create a work request. This will be much more streamlined, single-click type experience. And lastly, I mentioned the predictive insights in the analytics portal. Today, if I'm in the Telemes cloud and I subscribe to the analytics portal, we have actually some visualizations tied to that telematics data. Customers that enroll in the Insight program will have their own set of visualizations looking at specifically just that Insight data. However, one of the important functions of the analytics platform is supporting customers that want to do self-service reporting. So through the analytics platform, you will have access to these insights to develop your own reports through Azure Analysis Services. And if you are subscribed to the overall core, then you'll be able to correlate the insights in with a maintenance history on your own as well through the analytics portal. Now, we've one of the things that in order to develop a solution like this, we do need active data. And so we're trying to encourage some early adopters to help us in rolling out this product by participating in the initial solution. So the product's going to be priced based on the type of connectivity that the vehicles have. One of the things we found through the pilot was that the light-duty ODDB2 vehicles generally did not generate as much activity as was found through the heavy-duty vehicles. Part of it's just the nature of the usage and the patterns of usage, and the variability and things. So we have set the pricing to be distinguished based on what communication protocols are in place for the assets. These are quoted at an annual rate because models take time to learn. You don't want to just sign up for 3 months and say, I didn't see anything. It's going to take some time to train the models. We have to start to correlate history with activity. And so it does take a bit of time to build out insights. Now, diagnostic trouble codes, those things pop up day one. One of the interesting insights from the Serco pilot was when we turned them on, they realized they had a large number of vehicles that had active trouble or active engine lights, but the customers had not called them in yet. So that allowed them to go out and bring in these and start to address these outstanding issues. There is a $15 enrollment fee to set up each individual asset. And you can add assets individually. This is not necessarily a fleet-wide solution. You can do this based on need and roll it out over time across different fleets. Now, as part of this early adopter program, what we will do is we're going to waive the installation fee for anything that's signed up before the end of the year. We will give a 25% discount on that first year cost. But we are asking that there's a minimum number of assets that need to be enrolled, either 100 JBus units or up to 200 ODB2 units or a combination thereof within that group, basically a two for one ratio. But we've gotten feedback, from customers about, hey, I'm not sure if I want to do a whole year yet. So what we are going to offer is an early adopter trial. It's a fixed fee. It's $10,000. It's up to 200 units heavy duty. We want to focus purely on heavy duty for these trials. There will be no enrollment fee. It's 4 months. At the end of the 4 months, if you can cancel, or we'll automatically enroll those units into the early adopter subscription. We would kick these off in July when the integrations are available so that customers will have the full experience of getting the data fed to PitStop automatically and then seeing the insights appear right into Fleet Focus. So basically the two options are available. If you would like to sign up for a short-term trial, we can do that. Give you an opportunity to see the type of data and the type of insights that are being produced. Or if you really, it's the end of the budget year and you've got money available and you want to, enroll more than that and longer term, you can choose just to do the overall early adopter subscription, or you can do both. Start with the trial for 200 and then roll out others later. Either one either approach is available. Now, we recognize that some of you have some very large fleets. We will discuss with you some volume discounts for those that have, large number of assets that they'd like to enroll in the program. Now, saying, okay, that's the cost. What's the value in this? Well, one is it's helping us get to the ability to start to implement a predictive maintenance strategy, one that's really based on scheduled workload as opposed to an unscheduled breakdown and reactive, being proactive instead of reactive. Now, predictive maintenance requires telematics. It requires this ongoing health and status of the vehicle. It's not something I can necessarily deploy across every asset, but it is something that, your major assets can be supported with. Now, when we look at which assets, what assets should I enroll? One of the things that we discovered, through this pilot is that really there are certain assets that are going to benefit from this at a higher rate than others. One, what's the impacted downtime to that asset? Route-based assets. If that vehicle's out of service, I'm not going to meet that route. What if I've got cargo or people in that vehicle and a vehicle's broken down? That's a safety issue. So, those type of assets are going to be more important than, say, a basic butt mover that I've got, spares of, and if it's out of service, the person has an alternative. The cost to maintain. That's a definite thing that we discovered is that, the heavy duty vehicles, they're more to maintain, but they're also the ones that are more active when it comes to the telematic sensor data. And then just the availability of resources. Do you have enough technicians? Do you have enough spares to get into that? So as you start to look at these things, and you'll start to identify what you see as optimal candidates. What we kind of came to the conclusion was it's the complex assets that may not necessarily have a good operator engagement in. So I'm kind of relying on them to write up problems and they're not the best at it. Maybe it's something that's carrying people or precious cargo or safety cargo around. So all those type things, really came down to the heavy duty vehicles seem to be, prime candidates for this type of service. And particularly anything too that moves people are another group. Now, as I said, one of the parts of this process was where do we think we can see some savings? And we found really 4 broad areas where we think there are some tactical benefits to the fleet. One is through just remote monitoring diagnosis. In our experience with the pilots, both operations were heavily engaged in engaging their customers based off of the insights that they were getting generated. One, they didn't have to filter through all the information themselves and try to prioritize what was there. They were able to do it themselves based off of the insight information that Pitstop gave as to what was critical, major, and minor. And by the way, as a customer in the Pitstop environment, you can adjust a minor to a major to a minor, and backwards as needed. Breakdowns obviously is one where there's a great savings. Technician empowerment. This actually came from Dan Berlenbach at Long Beach, that he sees this as really a benefit to his technicians because, one, it's giving the technicians better information before they start their job. And it's also giving them enough information that a technician can make some decisions on their own. And he sees this as reducing the mean time to repair and rework, in part because technicians know where to start properly. And then lastly, just getting into a more of a prescriptive maintenance. one of the things, as I mentioned, that the customers were doing was taking the insights for the miners and then adding those into their next PM schedules. And so those PMs are being more productive because they're targeting specific things rather than just going through a rote checklist. And what that can lead to is fewer PMs, because rather than just doing something on an interval, a random interval, we can do it based off the actual health and the indications on the assets. So one of the things we did is we sort of put together this matrix for each of these, identifying, hey, how can we measure this and how can our customers measure that? And then what's the value basis? And so we put together a very simple sort of ROI calculator off of that looked at things like diagnostic time. So taking the examples from one of the pilot customers, we found is that about 99 of their work orders every month had a specific diagnosis job. And we, in talking with the customer, they felt that, hey, that time could be avoided now because of the ability to view the data or to view the insights without having to go and connect to the vehicle to get the same data. It's already there in my hand through the insights and that's out there. So that, very modestly, if I take, a quarter of an hour out of that, at their average rate, comes down to about $90 a year. Not a lot, but hey, that right there could basically pay for one asset, pay for the cost of the service. Similarly, tows and recovery. What was interesting and what we found both on in situations like this where there were tows, that 30% of those tows had an alert prior to that. Now, it may not necessarily be the alert that caused the tow, but there were alerts in that window prior to that breakdown. And if we just take the average cost of tow and reduce a portion of that, that enough, again, pays for some of the service. But when we start getting into road calls, and now we're involving a technician and the vehicle and time, again, we saw many of the road calls also had alerts prior to that. So those potentially could have been brought in and avoided. And again, here there's a bigger opportunity. So if we just sort of, take these sort of simple calculations, we're looking that, on a heavy duty vehicle, it's easy to get 2.5 times savings out of that. On a, light duty, maybe even potentially more on a cost per month. Now, this is what we consider tactical benefits that fleets can probably calculate and measure. There's also a whole series of strategic benefits that are much more
I
hard
was listening to some
calculates.
fleet stuff.
So
it's a webinar.
So we have actually, for example, mean time to repair. We mentioned that in technician empowerment, that by giving technicians better information up front and steering them towards the problems, we're able to reduce that time it takes to repair, which results in less downtime. Additionally, because of some of these major things can be known ahead of time, parts can be ordered potentially and requested. Just PM planning. Can we reduce the number of PMs through better predictive use and responding to alerts as opposed to fixed intervals? And then just generally prescriptive maintenance and the reduction in downtime coming from that by knowing alerts ahead of time of potential failures. So, Shiva mentions that organizations, can see a 10 times savings. In many cases, yes, you can. Excuse me, particularly when you factor in these strategic benefits. So one of the things I did as part of that, we did a quick analysis that looks at maintenance repair units. So CAM in our CAM module has a MRU calculator, and basically you put in the base number of hours, and then by category of vehicle, we look at the number of labor hours it takes to maintain an asset and come up with an equivalent to that base. And what we did here is this purple line going up, that represents the average number of labor hours or of labor cost over on the left-hand side. So a 12 MRU asset in this, at $180 an hour, in this fleet was costing about $17,000 a year to maintain in just labor. Whereas a light duty vehicle, might only take 4 or 5 hours a year of maintenance. And so it's not going to cost quite as much. And so we took the cost relative to the MRU, and that's what represents these shaded areas. That yes, for a single, light duty vehicle, as you see here, that yes, this as a percent of labor spend is a more significant investment. But as you start to increase the number of labor hours and the complexity of the asset, then this investment as a percent of spend drops dramatically. And this is, again, reinforces why we think heavy duty vehicles actually have the best opportunity here for a large ROI. And this is just based off labor costs, not necessarily parts or commercial spend as well, which does tend to parallel labor investments. So as you see that there is an investment, but that investment can be returned. That investing in this type of activity, one, we're going to reduce the amount of breakdowns and unplanned maintenance. You're going to see some tactical savings out of this, just I think off of the budget. There's larger strategic savings that you can eventually get to 5 to 10 times savings off of this investment. So with that, are there any questions?
All right, for those of you on the call, if you do have any questions, you do have the ability to take yourself off mute. So feel free to do that. You can also enter any questions into the chat, and we'll be sure to pick them off and get them over to our presenters here. But yeah, at this time we'll open for Q&A if there are any questions or thoughts from the group here.
Has anyone been experimenting with this on their own? All right. Well, I don't necessarily want to keep anybody, but I'm happy to stay. And if there are questions, if you are interested, feel free to reach out to myself, Rick, Mike Coble, who handles our telematics, is our telematics specialist, or your account manager. And we can be happy to talk with you about the program, trials, the early adopter, the overall program itself. Feel free to reach out and let us know. All right. Well, if there aren't any questions, thank you all very much and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.